So remember like 10 minutes ago when I said I won't watch educational videos? So I'm going to make an exception because this is called What Did the Megalodon Really Look Like? And I think it would be interesting.
Did Megalodon really resemble a giant version of a great white shark? Probably not, as we'll see.
No.
First, it's important
So I'll give you my current thoughts. From what I know, people have asked me, like, because I said the Megalodon just would not look like a modern great white shark. And usually if you have a sighting of a quote unquote Megalodon from somebody and they describe it very similarly to a great white shark, you can usually assume that sighting is just certifiably fake because it's just humans trying to associate things in the way that they do. They don't know what a Megalodon would actually look like, so they just compare it to the largest, predatory shark that they know. And so that's how you can usually rule those things out. From my understanding, a Megalodon shark is much more bland and universally colored, and they're much more stout. Think like bull sharks more so than great whites.
When paleontologists first started examining the evolutionary relationships of these giant shark teeth, the original idea was that the creature they had once belonged to must have been a close relative of the modern-day great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias. This was due to the
I'm just going to preface things that he says so that the video is at least somewhat my original content, because I feel bad reacting to good content because I feel like I'm just putting my face on good content. So no, it's not that related to the great white shark.
overall similar morphology between the teeth.
I think we looked at a phylogeny when we were talking about disproving the Megalodon, but people who said like the Megalodon evolved into the great white or some smaller species like that. And we talked about how the great whites family and the Megalodon's family were already genetically distinct when the Megalodon existed. So one evolving into the other doesn't make any sense.
It's therefore highly unlikely that Megalodon would have
appeared
exactly like a scaled-up white shark when alive. Essentially, you can boil it down to two contrasting schools of thought. However, there are details of the exact proposed relationships that vary within them. Firstly, there's the position I've just described, in which Megalodon is a member of the genus Carcharodon, along with the great white.
Is that a real thing that scientists actually think? I don't think I've ever heard research on the Megalodon being a Carcharodon. I think it just doesn't make any sense. It would also be pretty easy to disprove with DNA sequencing, wouldn't it? I don't know. I don't do that complex shit, and I certainly don't work with sharks. I just said sharks. It's been a long day, y'all. Can we just like have equal rights and not judge each other? I don't really do stuff with sharks, and I'm gonna move on.
And both are derived from a shark called Carcharodon orientalis, and both are parts of the shark family Lamnidae. Then there's the suggestion that the great white is in fact more closely related to the mako shark, the genus Isurus, and Megalodon is...
I think that's the one that I've heard most, is that the Megalodon is more related to the mako shark than the great white. And when I read into that theory, though I don't remember the exact, details of the research that I read, when I read into that at the time, it made sense to me.
It's derived from the genus Otodus and belongs to a different family to the great
Otodus.
white, Otodontidae.
It's officially an Otodus right now, right? Like when we looked up the Megalodon on Wikipedia the other day, it was an Otodus, Otodontidae.
This is a situation that is generally best avoided in taxonomy and evolutionary biology, and so to fix it, the researchers recommended that the members of Carcharocles should be included in Otodus, making Megalodon Otodus Megalodon. There have additionally been some other suggestions for where Megalodon should be placed.
And that's where it lies now, I believe.
However, even if Megalodon was actually closely related to C. carcharias, it probably wouldn't have looked like a scaled-up version anyway, since reconstructions by scientists who at the time thought the animal was in the genus Carcharodon revealed that Megalodon would have been stouter than expected, as well as possessing a wide...
Isn't that what I said at the beginning? I said wide, stout, and also the coloration would be more bland and brownish than great whitish.
With the shifting evolutionary placements of the organism came a reassessment of how we should consider its physical characteristics. And since it's no longer aligned with Carcharodon, it now seems relatively unlikely that it was just a larger, more robust and stocky great white.
So my original point being that when you have sightings that claim that it is just a large great white, they're pretty easy to disprove for that exact reason. It just doesn't make sense, especially when they're no longer even placed in that genus. When you look at the shark phylogeny and the evolutionary history, It just doesn't make sense that they would look anything like a great white.
One interesting alternative suggestion then, which has been proposed by shark researcher R. Aidan Martin, is that Megalodon could have looked like some sort of giant sand tiger shark. This idea is based on the similarities seen between otodus teeth and the teeth of the stout-toothed sand tiger shark. Otodus teeth have actually been described as being more similar to sand tigers than to those of the great white, and seeing as
it's an interesting theory.
Evolutionary,
I feel like we're just grasping for straws though, right? Like, the teeth look vaguely similar, so we're just going to assume that their entire body shape is similar. I don't know. I feel like we need more information than that. I feel like you can have similarly adapted teeth with entirely different body shapes.
This is because the sand tiger has an acceleration.
The teeth would also just not fit properly.
To displace water through the use of drag when they swim. Therefore, a biomechanical case can be made against the giant sand tiger form, which then proposes that the megashark would instead have a tail end more like that seen in cruising body forms such as whale sharks, basking sharks, tunas, whales.
Man, we really are just grasping at straws. I was kind of joking earlier when I said it just feels like we're fucking reaching for tiny pieces of evidence and guessing, but we truly are just guessing. I mean, we're just like, oh, this tiny thing has a similar shaped tooth, and oh my god, it must look like a sand tiger shark, but oh my god, the functional morphology doesn't make sense, so it must not look like a sand tiger shark. So, but it needed to cruise, so it must have the cruiser tail of a whale shark, and it's just like, Jesus. We're just putting together a bunch of total guesswork here.
Mako sharks, and yes,
there's basically only one thing that's for sure, and that is that it just does not look like a big great white. What it actually looked like is a whole ass mystery.
White sharks. But not because they're closely related, instead because this is the shape that's needed for effective underwater locomotion in axial swimmers once a large body size is achieved.
It's a cool drawing.
The front half
like a
of Megalodon
stout whale shark
could still have been very distinct. Many of you have probably come across this striking image before. Produced by DeviantArt user QB Livians, I'm probably saying that wrong. This particular reconstruction is based on the classification of Megalodon within the Otodus or Carcharocles genus. The thinking here is that with a more distant relation to the great white,
the teeth don't look right,
a different niche, the shark would evolve to look very different, with relatively much smaller eyes, an incredibly bulky look,
and a very
short snout to prevent it from getting in the way when the animal slammed its mouth into the big-bodied prey it fed on. Additionally, it's been given an enlarged tail fin too, reasoned to be to provide enough propulsion to move the huge mass of the animal through the water. While this is undoubtedly some excellent paleoart, and a remarkably imaginative speculative vision of this creature's life appearance...
Man, that's gotta be a cool thing to do, paleoart. I remember, I forget when this was, I got really into like drawing things for a while, and I like drawing like animals and stuff. And there's a lot, if you guys don't know, there's a lot of like extinct species of animal that have like Wikipedia descriptions and names and everything like that and fossils, but have never actually been like drawn. You know, like there doesn't exist an artwork of them. So there's no like actual visualization of the creature. I thought it'd be like a really cool job to just go through and like know a lot about fossils and be able to like look at the fossils and look at the evidence and like the adaptations and all that and just create a drawing. And now that is like, because your drawing is what people think of now when they think of the, you know, that particular animal. It's pretty cool.
But it does follow a lot of the arguments for Megalodon life appearance that we've discussed. So
Paleoart
it seems like it's a pretty
sick.
good start for imagining what a drastically unusual and unexpected Megalodon could have looked like. The shortened snout is a fairly reasonable speculation which has even appeared before in previous reconstructions, as I mentioned earlier, and it makes sense to assume that it could potentially make preying on large-bodied animals such as cetaceans easier for the shark. The increased bulk, too, seems logical and has been suggested before, but whether or not it was bulky to the extent shown here is up for question. The tail end of the shark also appears to be quite close to the cruising form that has been suggested for the creature. The reduced second dorsal and anal fins are good, and the caudal peduncle is quite thin, with the tail fin also being fairly lunate, as has been proposed. However, the reconstruction doesn't seem to possess keels on the caudal peduncle, which are found in other cruisers such as the whale shark. There are likely other problems to be identified with this reconstruction, depending on what exact classification of Megalodon you favour, as well as what you might consider Otodus and its ancestors.
He's a little too thick, I'll say.
But overall,
would be one problem that I would identify with that. I mean, like, stout is one thing, thick is one thing, but this is like beyond what is necessary for a Megalodon.